Yesterday, Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields, a guy who's going to be a top draft pick in this upcoming 2021 draft, a guy who was already close to leading Ohio State to the title game, had that great game in Clemson. Him and Trevor Lawrence are right up there for the Heisman, right up there for the draft. So in theory, Justin Fields has really nothing to gain outside of trying to win for Ohio State in coming back and playing a season in the fall in 2020. But yeah, besides that, he put out a petition yesterday to have their Big Ten reinstate the season and really take back what they did and let the players on the field, the players in the Big Ten, make their own decisions of whether they want to play or not. And this petition already, he just put it out yesterday, so not even 24 hours old, has over 216,000 signatures. Now, this is from anyone could sign this. This is a public petition. So I could sign it, you could sign it, your parents could sign it, your friends could sign it. If you want, your dog could sign it. Over 216,000 petitions to have the Big Ten reinstate the fall 2020 season. And on top of that, so not only do you have Justin Fields putting this petition out, trying to get the Big Ten to reverse their decision and playing football in the fall, you have parents for players at Iowa, at Penn State, at Nebraska, at Ohio State, wrote open letters to the Big Ten basically stating that they want their players, they want their own kids to be able to make the decision of whether they want to play or not, and basically leave the choice up to the kids, not the university presidents, not the Big Ten commissioner, not the conference as a whole. So I'm curious because now we have this one side where the players are pushing their hardest, and still, despite the fact that the decision's already been made, that the Big Ten's not playing, you have players now rallying together, you have parents rallying together, try to make the decision be allowed to be in the hands of the players. Put a season on, and if enough players want to play, we'll have a season. If not, obviously you don't have enough to field the team, we won't play. But put the decision in the hands of the players and the parents. Now, on the other hand, you have the NCAA Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Brian Hainline, who's been all over this since the start, has been talking publicly, laying out the challenges that college football specifically placed, or the challenges placed on college football because of the unique campus life, because they're not paid professionals. He's been the one advising and basically laying out the guidelines and the game plan. If college football was to be played, here's how it could do. So he appeared on CNN very late Saturday night, early Sunday morning, depending on where you are in the country. And let's just say he was very, very pessimistic, not just on football, but sports overall getting played in this country. He was quoted as saying on CNN, quote, "Right now, if testing in the U.S. stays the way it is, there's no way we could go forward with sports." They didn't say football, he said sports. So right now, if testing if testing in the U.S. stays the way it is, there is no way we can go forward with sports. Later on, he was quoted saying, "We're not in a place today where we can safely play sports," end quote. So you have the doctor, the chief medical officer for the NCAA, openly campaigning that no sports should be played. He's advising the NCAA, he's advising conferences, listen, this is the data we have. I don't think it's safe to play sports. The testing is not there. We can't really keep our athletes safe. We're not in a position as a country. Forget colleges. We are not in a position as an overall country where we can play sports safely. Now, with that said, so far, like I said, the three Power 5 conferences, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, three other conferences, the AAC, Sun Belt, and Conference USA, are going to play football this year, or at least going to try. So right now, 6 conferences out of the 10 are still in line, set, and getting ready to play football this fall. So this is the question I want to ask. This is the topic I kind of want to get into here, because we have dueling sides here, right? The doctors are saying one thing, the players and the parents are saying another thing. So I'm curious your thoughts. Should the players and the parents be allowed to make their own decision when it comes to playing football this fall, or really sports in general when it comes to playing this fall? Like I said, Justin Fields on one end, advocating, let the players make the choice. Here are all the guidelines, and if players feel safe, if they trust their school, if they trust the protocols, they let them play. On the other hand, you have Dr. Brian Hainline saying we are nowhere near close in this country to being able to put sports on safely. So I'm curious, in your mind, in your thoughts, in your opinion, should players be allowed to make their own decision in the fall? Because to me, where I fall is yes. I would allow the players, allow the parents to be the ones to make the decision when it comes to whether they feel safe enough to play or not, whether they want to play or not. And here's a few reasons why. One, as you saw throughout the 5 months, now it's been very uneven, it's been very disorganized. But for the most part, every school, every conference has created their own plan for testing and protocols. So in theory, if the protocols are laid out, if the testing plan laid out, which it is public, all these conferences laid out what their plan is going to be, laid out how the school is going to keep these players safe. And the players don't feel safe. They can opt out or they can speak up. And speaking of speaking up, players have been shy. And that's one of the best things about this new player movement, player empowerment movement we've seen really since the pandemic started and the players realize the power they have. If you speak up, if you don't like something that's going on, whether it's within the football team, whether it's within the university, you speaking up will get something done. These college football players, with how much money they bring in, how much money they generate for the university, have a lot of power. Because guess what? If they don't want to play, there's a lot of money, and there's a lot of different areas within the school that will suffer if football isn't played. So we've seen it all over the country. It started with UCLA a few months ago. They put out and they wrote an open letter that the Los Angeles Times got a hold of, basically laying out what they wanted the medical procedures to be. They wanted third parties in there. They wanted doctors in there that weren't associated with UCLA that would give an unbiased opinion. So the UCLA players spoke out and UCLA adjusted their protocols. Most recently, just this last week, we saw Florida State wide receiver Warren Thompson. Florida State has started practice. They have gotten in the moment. Again, the Florida State's in the ACC. So they're gearing up to play a college football season this fall. They've had practices. They've had the protocols put in place. And Warren Thompson, wide receiver, spoke up. He felt that the coaches were lying to him. They weren't truthful. And they were pressuring kids to basically not reveal if they were positive or not. They couldn't afford to have players go into quarantine or basically be away from the team for 10 days or 2 weeks because it would cost them too much time in trying to get ready for the season. So he spoke up, and he didn't feel safe about how the coaches at Florida State were handling the protocols and the testing and really the transparency since really resuming and ratcheting up training camp. So players will speak up. They won't be shy to let you know what's going on. If something's not right, they won't be afraid to voice their opinion. So now that they have that power, now they have the option to opt out if they don't feel safe, why not make them let the decision? And they are the ones, after all, that are taking the risk. This is what drives me kind of insane with college sports overall, is that the players on the field, whether it's wanting to play during a pandemic, whether it's really any aspect of college sports, the players consulted, the ones whose lives will be affected, whether it's a new rule within the game, whether it's some sort of protocols outside of the field for really a variety of reasons within college sports. The athletes are really the last ones consulted, if ever consulted, and the ones that are impacted the most are almost never talked to. So shouldn't, before this decision was made, shouldn't the players have been consulted, talked to, get given their thoughts of if they feel safe or not before the season is taken right out from under them? And here's, to me, a good example of why I do feel better about college football starting. You had Ohio State, their center, Josh Myers. He was talking to ESPN about Justin Fields putting out this petition and his thoughts of whether the Big Ten should play or not. And he said that he feels safer playing than not playing because, if the protocols are in place, players are getting tested twice a week. Twice a week, you're getting tested every week to see if you have it. The facilities, the weight room, the practice facility, the cafeteria that they eat, they're constantly being cleaned. They're constantly being sanitized. And not to mention, when you're on a team, when you're working for something, there's that pressure from teammates and coaches to do the right thing, to not go to a party, to not be that guy, to do the wrong thing, venture out, and possibly put the entire team and maybe even the season at risk for that school. There is a pressure there where if you take that away, if there's no season, if they're trying for the spring or they just punt to fall 2021, there's really no responsibility, in theory, to do the right thing. There's no incentive to do the right thing. There's no incentive not to go to the party, not to go to a place where, there's a lot of kids hanging out without masks or a lot of social distancing going on. But I truly believe if you have a season to look forward to, if you're playing, it incentivizes you to do the right thing. And I'll take it one step further. Being a Penn State alum, I know at least how it works on campus and how, at least we're talking about dorm life, we're talking about players kind of being on their own. At Penn State, at least, they're almost in a quasi-bubble. And here's what I mean by that. There are certain areas on campus where only athletes stay. There's one area by the football building where it's mostly basketball and football. All townhouses over there, but really for the most part, only athletes stay there. And for those athletes not on campus, those football players specifically that aren't staying on campus, they stay a place that is about 5 minutes down the road away from campus. And if you've been in college, if you even know that, I know 5 minutes doesn't sound that far away, But when you're in an area and you're in, a small town, essentially, where everything is walkable, a 5-minute drive is basically another country away. These apartment buildings, these complexes where the football players specifically stayed, no one goes to, I promise you. No one is taking a 5-minute Uber or 5-minute drive to go to a party at some of these apartment buildings that are way, way, way off campus. All the bars are downtown. All the house parties, all the fraternities are all downtown. No one, I promise you, is going way out of their way to go 5 minutes away. It is another country, another continent, it feels like. So these players are already in a quasi-bubble, and I'm sure Penn State's not the only school and university where that setup is similar. A lot of football players live with each other. A lot of them live in apartment buildings off campus. So if you at least give them a reason, which is a football season, to take it seriously, to do the right thing, and like I said, I do think that social pressure of not being the guy on the team to let everyone down, put everyone at risk, I think that really incentivizes players to do the right thing. So not only, as you hear, Ohio State player basically says he feels safer if the season's played. You have opt-outs. You could speak up if you feel that the school isn't taken seriously. Not to mention, let's talk about money here, because this is a business after all. We're talking about possible careers potentially ending before they even start if you don't play in the fall. And here's a great, great, great example. Joe Burrow, the number 1 pick overall by the Cincinnati Bengals, the Heisman winner, the man who led LSU to a 15-0 season last year. If this happened last year, right, if this pandemic happened in 2019 instead of 2020, and college football wasn't played in 2019, you know what Joe Burrow isn't right now? He's not a number 1 pick. He's probably not even drafted. His stock was so low coming to his last year at LSU that he was at best a late-round pick. And he tweeted himself, if this happened last year, if this happened in 2019, before he took the world by storm, before he took over the college football world and had the best season statistically from a quarterback we've ever seen, he said he's probably looking for another job. That LSU season never happens. The number 1 pick never happens. And he's probably looking wherever, insurance, as a whatever he wants to do. I don't know what he wants to do. But he's looking for a real job in a different line of work that's not the NFL. So there are plenty of careers, and there are plenty of players similar to Joe Burrow. So if they don't play this fall, your career is over before it started. So at least to me, my frustration, like I said before, the decision often about college athletes and their future is often made without their input, without their consultation. One of the parents who wrote the open letter I mentioned, Nebraska, their parents are more upset because their players were not consulted on the decision to play or not. And there's really no reasons given not playing. And they asked the question that I asked, what changed from August 5th to about August 11th? The virus didn't change. No outbreaks really changed. But what did? Because you put the schedule out, you allow practices to start. If you were really that concerned that a season was in peril, you wouldn't put the schedule out, you wouldn't start practices. So at least to me, I would, and I wish and I hope, that instead of presidents making the decision, instead of athletic directors and chancellors, let the players, the ones on the field, the ones taking the risk, make the decision of whether to play or not. Let them be the ones to say, you know what, I feel safe, I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to try for it. Or you know what, I don't feel safe, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to back away. We've seen already a ton of good players back out and opt out. Kennedy Brooks, a great running back, for Oklahoma, was the latest big-name player to opt out. He did that yesterday as Oklahoma gears up as they are in the Big 12 to play. So there's social pressure to make sure the coaches and the players are doing the right thing. You can opt out if you want. But for me, I would like to see the kids make the decision. I would like to see the players on the field be the ones to decide their future or not presidents, not chancellors, not athletic directors. So I'm curious your thoughts. Should college football players, like Justin Fields is advocating for and plenty of others, should they be allowed to make their own decision on playing this year? And with that said, if so, Justin Fields is asking the Big Ten to reinstate the season. Should the Big Ten reconsider their decision and maybe actually play this year? I think yes. I really do. And if enough players want to play, you can have a season, Because like I said, too many times, athletes' decisions are made for them in college without their input, without their consultation, without their opinion. Let the players, the ones on the field taking the risk, the parents who could allow their players to, or their sons, to take the risk or not, let them be part of the decision making. Don't take it away from them before they don't even have a chance to think about it or say yes.